Welcome back, everybody, to Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain podcast. I'm Stepheen Cuomo, executive producer of Santa Fe Fashion Week. I'm really excited to have Brittany as a guest today. Brittany, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am thrilled to be here today. I am a entrepreneur, kind of accidentally, a co-founder of a tech company. My real loves lie deeply in design, art, beauty, and communication. And so one of the things that I've gotten to do is as I've grown in this particular role is to reach out and work with people in fashion, and I have loved every moment of that.
Tell me, so your tech company is fashion based then? Can you tell us about that?
One of our verticals is fashion based. Yeah, our company is called Viiision. And the thing that we do is to deliver information in, well, we're digital information delivery on personal devices, and we do that in multiple languages, which means that we've been able to help designers because all of these incredible designers that are coming out of the woodwork right now have incredible stories to tell about the innovation that got them where they are, the vision behind what they're doing, their pride and their purpose. And without the right platform to share that information, people get lost in the shuffle of what's happening every day. I mean, good ideas die every day. You have to make sure you're getting to the public in the correct ways.
You say platform. Can go a little deeper on that? Is it for social media platform, or what kind of platform are you talking about?
Absolutely. So it's actually a software platform that allows any information that goes on our platform is then available via QR code, or I want to say text because most often it's sent through text, but really it's link. And then that information is available in any one of 21 languages, and we're always expanding. But it's not just about language translation because anybody can do that. It's about localization and being culturally relevant. So, one of our designers sells in many countries, including the United States and Italy, but he also sells in the UAE. And inside of Dubai, many of the typical photos that he would use are not allowed; they're illegal.
Mhm.
Or the way that he speaks about his fashion needs to be changed just slightly, and our software allows for him to do that and create a sound beautiful, user experience across the globe and one that's meaningful to everybody who buys from him.
I'm really leveraging the podcast platforms. Mine's really not. I don't think it's really for designers to reach directly to the consumer so much. I think it's more of a place for people in our industry to connect with each other and kind of share their stories, maybe learn from each other because they're all different levels in their journey in fashion, and be it a stylist or designer or model, stuff like that. They all have their own unique challenges, and they all bring something different to the table, which I find really interesting.
And designers are incredible, and there's so much innovation happening right now from the big design houses, from like mushroom leather and those kinds of things, clear down to those emerging designers. I have a friend whose very young son just launched his own fashion line called, I believe it's called Comfy Monkey,
Hmm.
because it calls to people. It's art, it's creation, and it's beautiful. And I am so inspired by the things I'm seeing right now.
So let's dig deeper into fashion. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the fashion industry. I produce Santa Fe Fashion Week, and it's interesting. I was watching how different brands, I don't know if you're reading the Wall Street Journal or whatnot. There's a lot of knockoffs and stuff like that, but something you cannot differentiate yourself is by holding events. And so bigger brands and even smaller brands holding these immersive brands, building brand loyalty and reaching out that way because there's no way to cheat code on something like an event.
You're absolutely right, and there are really good fakes out there, good enough that Walmart's getting sued right now, right? Uh,
Mhm.
is they made an excellent fake. And the problem behind those fakes, I don't think is new to anybody in this industry. It means that you're getting something without paying the price for that innovation that was required to create it. Obviously, that's a huge issue right now. And I love that you said you can't fake an event. People love an event, and it gives consumers and designers the chance to get to know each other and to decide whether or not you would sort of sit at each other's table. There was a study done pretty recently about all of the millennials jumping luxury brands and how many are jumping to a brand that's more expensive. And even in these economic times, and they're doing that because they resonate with who the brand is and what they're accomplishing right now. So brands have to find a way to voice who they are and to really connect with their consumers right now. And events are a fantastic way of doing that. Because I know that you're, with behind the curtain and all of that, you're really interested in opening all that up, and that's beautiful innovation.
I appreciate that. I spoke recently to a woman. She's a contributor for Vogue Italia, and we were talking about how a lot of people are foregoing the bigger fashion events also, and going to more regional events, if you will. To so some people only have so much vacation time, so it's like they've been there, done that. They want to discover emerging designers. They want to go to cool events, but also maybe explore the cities that these events are being held in.
And I think there's a lot to be said about localization right now, not just in technology, but in how we're feeling about things. And for myself as well, I've had a global network for a long time, but it was just within the last 6 months that I've decided I really needed to be familiar with the city I grew up in, and the art and the beauty that's emerging here. Because without some of that hometown feel, we lose some of the voice that inspires us. I think that's true across the board. Amazing things are coming out of New Mexico, I'm sure right now that I don't know anything about, and I'm so glad there are voices who will bring that to us as a fashion community.
I appreciate that. You're seeing, you mentioned art, art and fashion. You're seeing a lot more of that. We're pivoting to where we're holding more of our events in art galleries. And what's interesting, with this, not only is the podcast called Fashion Behind the Curtain, but also my events are called. It could be Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain podcast, or show, or in other cities. But the point is when you go to an art gallery, they don't bring the art to you. You don't stand there and they bring the art to you. And I think fashion is wearable art. So making the models, the more like sculptures, if you will, the consumer could go and look at the fashion, talk about the fashion, and give them more an immersive event. And then also maybe like there's a hair show going on, and you can talk to designers. So again, fashion and art, and I think you're seeing a lot of that in the bigger cities as well, where the art galleries need help, maybe driving traffic to their art galleries, and the fashion designers need kind of a cool, hip place to hold their events.
I love that, and it's artists bringing each other and really sharing in the community, and I think that there is, maybe more than ever, a real thirst in many communities to understand the purpose behind something. What does this mean for me? What concepts and ideas are you exploring by creating this thing? So how cool for consumers and appreciators of these beautiful arts to have the opportunity to meet with a designer, to meet with a model, and to really understand what is happening in the minds of people who are creating some of the most beautiful things on this planet.
Yeah, I think just giving a unique experience too. I think the runway shows are really played out. I say like the cool kids are kind of behind the curtain. People getting ready, doing their thing, and then everybody else who's not really in the industry is sitting on the outside, just waiting for the fashion to go up and down. But I was listening to Business of Fashion, and he was talking about how runway shows, the fashion shows haven't really changed over 100 years, and I think people are looking for different events. I was looking on your LinkedIn, and I guess you connect on Pod Match. We'll give them a little plug, and you're talking about how businesses the challenges of entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Do you see that also in the fashion industry?
Oh, absolutely. And maybe more there than anywhere, because fashion is seen as niche. It's not. Fashion is actually very accessible, and it's one of the easiest ways for people to express themselves. But I think when most people think fashion, they think high fashion, they think design houses. And so we have all these little tiny pop-ups, these little people. I mean, you go to Rome and you shop by the Spanish steps, and it starts with the big houses and then it spirals outward, right? It's hard to break into that industry. It can be extremely difficult to talk about your vision. And then once you do, you have to have people buy in. I was in Japan a week and a half ago and met with a new designer name of Show, and his brand is called Kimonos Reborn. And he has this incredible process where they go to the auctions and buy old kimonos. They spend a month restoring them, and then they're respectfully turning them into something else that is wearable right now. He has this vision. Other people saw the vision and got excited about it and started doing something similar. He's still, I mean, he's been people in 84 different countries own his designs, but he still has to find a way to differentiate himself and explain why what he's doing is so cool. Explain that kimonos have a story behind them, a purpose. Every color, every design says something. It's historically important and beautiful. How does somebody compete? How does somebody like that compete with Gucci?
I think the big thing is, it is storytelling. I spoke to a woman. She started, I think it's bra and underwear, bra and panty company. What was interesting is she built out the she has like 1,500 people that were following her story and almost like built a community first and then built a brand out from there. And so what she was able to do with these 1,500 people was send out the samples, get immediate feedback, and then make those changes. But again, doing that founder story and then it branches out from that. And one of her big things was she worked for big fashion houses before she started her own brand. And she realized like a lot of these brands really weren't listening to the consumer. I think as a small, like any other smaller company, be it fashion, whatever you're in, it's easier to pivot in some ways that bigger fashion houses may not be able to do so.
Absolutely, and that's always the push and pull in any industry is the big guys are too bloated to move, and the small guys can pivot, but they don't have the money, and so often the big guys will come in and buy out the smaller guys, in order to bring that innovation forward. It's absolutely fascinating to watch the things that happen across industry. And you're right, storytelling is one of the most powerful things that we can do, but it has to be done in such a way that it resonates with people. And sometimes when we love something, it's so near and dear to us that we don't know how to talk about it in a way that really hits with other people. I hope that, and one of the things, I mean, we help people with, but if you don't have the money to work with a consultant or you don't feel like you have people you can run your ideas past, run it past ChatGPT, run it past anyone so that you can make sure you're telling the most valuable part of your story that people will connect with.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't want to get too political, but I posted a video yesterday about the ICE raids and how President Trump, love him, hate him. He talked about how he's backing off on like agriculture and restaurants. But I saw somebody post, I kind of spoke to that, but he hasn't done anything. I think the garment industry is like 90,000 employees in the United States. A lot of them are from China and Spanish descent, Mexican descent. Talking about how is that going to affect the American apparel business as well. And a lot of smaller designers work a lot with American manufacturing. Going overseas has its own difficulties. I know there's a lot of talent obviously overseas, and that's why a lot of companies do business overseas to be able to pivot that fast, and then to be able to find manufacturers overseas.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, again, barring politics, right?
Mhm.
Something that we sometimes forget is even many of the textiles that these designers work with come from across seas, and we don't always have a way for someone to pivot that quickly. And you can destroy an entire industry by destroying trade, by destroying relationships. We can argue all day about where things should be made and where we should really be investing, but we do have to be cognizant of the way that our decisions affect not just the top tier of society, but everyone and what it means for the population at large.
No, and that's what they're saying is the garment, there's other things that have been political, and the garment industry really kind of got behind it and showed solidarity towards it. But again, with this going on, and it kind of reminds me, I go to Magic, once or twice a year in Vegas. It's a big trade show. And issue too is if your business model is wholesale, and you get a contract through Magic, which is wonderful, and then you tell the boutique you're going to be able to deliver at such and such a price, and then all of a sudden with the tariffs and stuff like that, things get more expensive, and you still have to either make good on that promise or you don't deliver the goods. And then the boutique is like, whoa, I don't have any clothes to carry in my store. So things do go. And I think as a consumer, you don't really, you don't realize that. I have some friends like, oh, they're just taking advantage of, they're just raising prices because they can raise prices. And that's often not the case.
It's hard because we don't all major in economics. We don't all major in international trade. We don't, how are we supposed to know everything? And the answer is that you can't. But hopefully, you can get well rounded enough on an issue that you understand it enough. And uh, it's so difficult to talk about any of these things right now because everybody is so frustrated. I do think it's important to keep in mind sort of that butterfly wing causing a tsunami. We have to be mindful when we move things around. Really big things can happen from what seem like small decisions.
You can really wrap it into storytelling, right? So if you have a great platform and you've been telling your founder's journey, and who doesn't love a good drama? I mean, that's why we watch things, reality TV and stuff like that. There's always that drama. And this is another part of being a business owner, right? So if you had that relationship with your consumer and not just posting pictures on Instagram like, "Wow, I make a beautiful dress," or an amazing suit, but again, bringing them along and like, "Wow, this just happened. I had this shipment, I had this order," and then telling people their difficulties. And in a way, some people, your consumers would probably root for you and know what's going on and don't think it's like a sleight of hand, like, "Oh my God, if Neiman Marcus is raising prices, you're like, oh, it's a big corporation." But again, if you have that relationship with your customer, via whatever your delivery method is, I mean, I think that makes for kind of a good story.
It absolutely does, and it helps people to understand, you've raised the price of shoes by 3 or $400 and everybody's like, "You jerk," but if you can come out and be honest and have that conversation with people and say, "It actually costs me 200% more to get the leather right now, and labor is 6 times as expensive as it was this time last year," and by the way, those are not like, I did not do any research behind those
Right.
numbers. People do understand. They may or may not be able to purchase from you, but if they don't, at least they have a voice to talk about what they're doing, the decisions they're making. And user generated content is incredibly valuable right now. And if you have 100 followers writing their senator about what's happening to you because they're concerned, you're mobilizing what's at hand for you. That makes you powerful. That puts things back in your court. So I love that you're advocating for that because that's a very intelligent way to go about it. All part of your story.
So recently I saw a video, and actually one of my videos that actually went fairly TikTok viral. And there was a story about Steve Madden was on an interview. I forget the name of the podcast, but it had a lot of views. And I'm an ex stockbroker, and I think the movie Wall Street, one of those shows, he got caught up in some things when his company went public. He went to jail for a bit of time and came out. But those shoes, essentially, and I think I watched a documentary about Steve Madden where he was pretty bright in a way. He wasn't a cobbler or anything like that, but he was able to walk around the streets of New York, see what women were wearing. In a way, it was kind of a knockoff. I mean, yeah, it's easy to put like maybe a little spin, a little of his own polish on it, if you will. The shoes aren't made to be maybe the most comfortable, but he is a rock star, I think, in the shoe industry. So, do you have any stories about that? Have you worked with any smaller brands that try to do things themselves?
I do. One of my favorite designers and one of my favorite clients ever, his name is Enrico Quini. He's out of Italy. We had the pleasure of meeting him actually at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and he started
Mm.
talking to me about his shoes, and I didn't believe him. He said, "I have an app. It will scan your foot. It will shoot that scan to my factory in Italy, and I will make a pair of shoes custom fit for your foot. And my goal is to extend the life that women can wear high heels by 10 years." So he's like, You'll be comfortable in my shoes all day." I am 5'1". I grew up wearing high heels. I wear high heels all the time. I did not believe him. I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I bet your high heels are super duper comfortable." He's like, "They
Mhm.
are," and he ended up flying me to Italy to tour his, factory, and while we were there, he went to Fashion Week Milan. I was wearing a pair of his 6-inch spikes, and we got lost on the streets of Milan. They forgot where they had, parked their van. We walked about 4K, and I was in these heels
Mhm.
on the cobblestones of Milan, and I had no problems. I got into the van and I was like, "How am I not in screaming pain right now?" These shoes, especially I think for women, help us to feel confident, but what I love about him is, firstly, personalization of fashion, which I think is
Mhm.
important, and second, his idea around what he did. Instead of saying, "Women should wear my shoes because they make men go wild," he's like one of his direct quotes is, "There's something wrong when we can make a man walk on the moon and we can't make a woman walk comfortably in heels for a day on
Right.
planet Earth." His goal is to make the lifetime of women wearing shoes an extra 10 years, and he can do that because he has patents around lifting your foot. When I talked to him, he told me because his shoes are priced higher. They're a luxury shoe. They're priced along the same lines as a Louboutin, and it's innovative and it's comfortable and they're beautiful. That's what's important about fashion, like stretching the limits, not just turning out another shoe with a red sole. Not that Louboutins aren't beautiful, but I'm always looking for that new thing, and I think many of us are. What do we have to say? And whether it's shoes or, you know, dresses, suits, whatever, I think bespoke is a way that fashion is going right now, and I think that says a lot about where our culture is going.
Well, it's interesting too for for a company like his to be able to utilize technology, being able to scan your foot. making like shoes really based on that. I just started wearing cowboy boots recently. I'm learning how to dance country, and I have no idea what it's like to wear heels, but I can only imagine because the boots I bought, the heels a little bit higher. I didn't know I was buying. I guess there's different kinds of heels you can buy in cowboy boots. But like, oh my god, this really hurts. So I can imagine like trying to walk in heels got to be very
I
painful.
was a ballroom dancer in college. I was on the ballroom dance team, and dancing in heels is its own little beast. Um, so kudos to are you line dancing? You're doing country swing.
Two-step. There's a guy here in town. He's a really amazing instructor, and so I think it's two-step. And I think I just learned the cha-cha something like that. I don't know. It's. I tell you, it's pretty intimidating. You go to the country bars here in town, and the guys. I mean, they've been dancing forever. I don't know, but they're just such amazing dancers, and the women are really open to pretty much dance with everybody. But as an outsider looking in, it's like, oh my god, she's gonna be so bored, dancing with me after dancing with that gentleman. So you have that, and I actually have an audition today. I'm an aspiring actor, and the same thing. You go to acting class, and you see the other people in acting class, and they're really such great actors. And then I'm acting, I'm like, oh my god, who am I kidding? And so I think in business or even in dancing or acting, you really have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations because it's like if it's like, well, I'm just uncomfortable trying to act in front of people or dance in front of people, just going to live in a shelter, just shelter, not trying anything. And the same thing I think with modeling and fashion is if you can't handle like some negative feedback or like, oh, I love my stuff, I'm afraid to put it out to the world because what if they don't like it. I think there's a lot of things intertwined in that.
You're totally right, and we have to be brave. Mediocrity is not an art. Nobody reads a book about someone who lived the middle of the road their whole life, and you have to be I mean, it sounds so cliché, but it's so true that you have to be willing to suck at something in order to
Right.
get really good at something and in order to have something valuable to say, and if you don't have anything valuable to say, unfortunately, people will know that, and then you've used up all of your social currency on saying nothing.
That's true. Yeah, another challenge. I don't know if this is really a subject matter that something you approach or whatever. But I see like you have runway models, you have print models, and kind of tying in acting as well. But there's a gentleman in New York. He owns an agency. He's pretty abrupt when it comes to telling it like it is. Models have to be a certain height and a certain size and all that stuff. And so he's getting he kind of get crushed a little bit on social media. But the truth of the matter is, even like if I'm just hoping to be a day player as an actor. I don't know if I'd ever be an A-lister, if you will, which I'm okay with that. It's like, okay, it's gonna take a lot of work, but the thing about acting is you don't have to be like the best looking guy or the best looking woman to be an A-list actor like back in the 50s and 60s. And I don't want to be a dream crusher. I don't want to tell this model, not that I know her personally, but you're 5'4" and making in New York is going to be it's going to be tough, because at that level, like acting, as you climb that food chain in acting or modeling, it's very difficult. It's very competitive, and it's interesting too because there's obviously a lot they could do with makeup. The man and woman, they do the hair right in the model, and all of a sudden they look, And I think that you also have that with teenagers, like, oh my god, this person's so gorgeous, and now it's filters, but it's makeup on the runway.
Right.
So you can do a lot with that, but when it comes to height and size, there's really no way to fake it. And I've even seen my 5'3", and we're like, well, I'm gonna wear heels. I'm like, well, the models are wearing the 5'9" they're wearing heels. And you have
Mhm.
sample sizes when it comes to runway shows. So I don't know. It's an interesting subject. Like I said, I don't want to be anyone say, well, you're never going to make it because you're too short. But the truth of that matter is, there are kind of, and again, the bigger shows, New York, Milan, the really big shows, regional shows like mine, will accept models that are short and stuff like that. So any thoughts on that? I don't know. Have you worked with models? Do you see that in the fashion industry?
I have not worked I mean, we've done a little bit with modeling for a few of the photo shoots, but what I would say is there's nothing wrong with having dreams. All of us have dreams. When I was younger, I wanted to be a runway model. I am 5'1".
Mhm.
It's never gonna happen for me. There's nothing wrong with knowing your strengths and knowing where you have a voice. If you really have a calling, right, to be in the place that you wanna be, you dang well better be the best in the industry at it. But sometimes it's worth really looking at ourselves and deciding if our goals tie in with who we are. And I'm not talking about privilege and I'm not talking about any of those other things. If I am crazy introverted, it's really
Mhm.
unlikely that I'm the best person to speak publicly for my company.
Right.
If I am dedicated to that, if I feel like I have something to say and everybody needs to hear it, I will do everything I can to learn and grow, develop, and I'll hire the best teachers. I'll do like what you're doing with your acting, right? I get a coach and I do all the things. Fantastic. But no, if you want to be different in this industry or any industry, and you are outside of what they are expecting, you damn well better be the best at what you're doing. Again, mediocrity is not going to be an option for you. We can talk all day about fairness
Mhm.
and there is some of that and you may find a designer who has something different to say and wants someone way outside the box. Really look at yourself and decide if what you want is really what you're hoping for or if it's just a thing that we really that sounds really good. Does that make sense? Like,
It does, and I often talk to, some of these models. I'm like, well, maybe might want to pivot into acting, if you really like to be in front of the camera. Being an actor is no easy task either because you have to remember a line. I mean, it's
yes.
say modeling is difficult. I agree, modeling is difficult, but being an actor is like really next level. But then again, kind of ties into what you're saying with your shoe designer out of Italy. Is if you're trying to compete at the level of making a beautiful shoe, I mean that's pretty cluttered at this point. But if you could make something like a unique proposition, like, man, I make shoes that are really comfortable and I use this technology to do so, and it's made in Italy, and this is why the price point, really a story, a differentiator of why they should be buying his shoes rather than going to Neiman Marcus or somewhere to buy a name brand shoe, but really the quality's just not there.
Knowing your market, knowing all the things is incredibly important, and if you have something new and really exciting to say, people will buy into that, but just like, "I wanna be a runway model because it seems fun and glamorous," is probably not the unique way that you need to represent yourself if you wanna break the mold.
I don't know if it's a generational thing, but there's always this push like follow your passion and be your authentic self. And following a passion, I think it will only take you so far because if you're not really devoted to it, it's a lot of work. It's not just stepping on the runway or gee, I'm on a movie set. All the hours of the auditions and learning lines and stuff like that. Or same thing, being a fashion designer. Wow, I really want to be a fashion designer and it's difficult. And I've been a realtor on and off, same thing. It's very easy to get a real estate license, but then how you get customers, and it's all through retail. As a stockbroker, a realtor, how you get clients. As a designer, how do you get people buy your clothing? As a model, how do you try to get yourself booked? So it's not limited just to the fashion industry, but I think any walk of life where you want to kind of not just collect a check, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to go out on your own, be it an artist or any other business owner, there's some struggles.
Yeah, like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I started this business that I work in with my co-founder, and people will say, "Oh, you're your own boss. How exciting!" No, I'm sorry. I put in more hours than anybody could ever think. I go to lots of other countries where I pay my own way, and I never fly first class. And
Mhm.
as glamorous as all of it sounds, the actuality of it is different. And what it really is just hard work and scrappiness. So whatever
Yeah.
your passion is, you better make sure you feel really good about it and very solid because it will take a lot to get there. Um,
That's what I kinda love about you'll wrap it up here in a second, but that's what I love about this podcast, and I go to a networking event. I don't know if it's all over the world, but it's definitely all over the country called 1,000,000 Cups. It's a free event, and it's not like, pass out your cards or try and network that way, but it's really a place to kinda spill your guts out with other business owners. It's a safe spot because it's funny, this gentleman who he kinda opens a meeting every week. He talks about, like, if you try to tell your friends your struggles, they're gonna be like, "Well, I warned you, you shouldn't have tried to go into business," or you tell maybe your spouse and whatever, people don't really want to hear it. And then when you're out with your clients, you really got to put on this shiny smile, like, oh, things are great, and so again, I think this podcast is really meant for people to talk about the fashion industry, some of the challenges, stuff like that. And that, like I said, this networking group is kind of a neat place. But I think just having a community of people, like you said, owning your own business is, yeah, it's great, it's amazing, but it's definitely a lot of work.
yeah, life is that way, and it, but it's a great time to be alive, even as many negative things are happening, and I would always encourage people, whether you're in fashion or anywhere, your story is your full power. It's who you're becoming and it's what you're representing to others. It is the only legacy most of us will ever leave behind. So make sure that you're taking full command of your story and you're telling it the way you want it told. Um, don't let other people write it for you.
I love that. Well, on that note, I think that's a beautiful place to end. Brittany, thanks again for being a guest on Santa Fe Fast Week, Fast Behind the Curtain podcast. Thanks again so much.
Thank you.